Welcome back to the Metaphoric Music Review. It's Darin's 50th episode. Darin, how does it feel?
It feels pretty great. I felt like you put a lot of extra oomph in that welcome just for me. Wow.
I know. My neighbors are going to be hyped about that. They're celebrating with us.
Oh.
If you don't know, Darin called in quote-unquote sick for a couple episodes, so he didn't get to celebrate the milestone with us.
He was also on vacation, just fucking slacking off a couple times.
I was in Mexico, actually. Ooh.
Yeah, Dan always makes sure to get back in time for the episode, but not Darin. No, not Darin. Oh, yeah, I should introduce us. I'm Gabe.
Yeah, I'm Dan.
And I'm Darin.
Talking about the music that Pitchfork thinks everyone should be talking about. If you don't know, Pitchfork is an online music magazine. It's basically the loudest voice in music today. Each week, they review a bunch of albums. Most get pretty mediocre scores, but a couple get this coveted BNM or BNR label. Dan, what is that?
BNM, Best New Music. BNR, Best New Reissue.
Right, so those are the releases that Pitchfork thinks all lovers of music should be talking about, and that's exactly what we're going to do. But we're also going to talk about a few notable pans, some gems that Pitchfork is either underrated or ignored completely, Pitchfork's weekly Sunday classic review, and now Pitchfork's BNTs, or Best New Tracks. It's important to remember, though, you don't need to know or care about Pitchfork at all to enjoy this podcast. We're going to tell you everything you need to know about the week in music. So, Darin, what are we talking about this week?
For the week of April 10th through April 16th, we'll only be discussing one album, and that was the Sunday classic, Black Flag's Damaged. But we will be spending some more time talking about the ever-popular 2017 Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival, which took place over the weekend. And last but not least, we will pay tribute to Pansonic's Mika Vainio, who passed away this week at the age of 53 by looking back at the group's 1997 classic, Kulma.
Yeah, Dan is also going to tell us about another concert field trip. Darin actually went on a field trip, but it had nothing to do with music, so better luck next time.
Well, I mean, it was Star Wars Celebration. I mean, I'm sure there's Star Wars fans out there. John Williams was there.
We could have forced it.
He was there on Friday when I wasn't there, but that's still worth mentioning.
Bummer. Did you have fun at least celebrating your 50th episode there?
yeah. They had a podcast stage. I was thinking that we should have made an appearance there. I think it would have been great.
Oh yeah, excellent. Next year we'll do that for sure. Okay, let's kick it off. This week we got 6 BNTs, or Best New Tracks, like I mentioned earlier, which Pitchfork typically uses to highlight promising singles. What we like to do with these is listen to them right now, right at the top of the show, and share some quick reactions in real time, just to decide whether the upcoming albums from which they are taken could potentially be worthy of that coveted BNM. Unfortunately, we're going to have to skip most of these for the sake of time, including Fortet's remix of the XX's Violent Noise, because it's just a remix and not anything particularly to look forward to. Kamasi Washington's Truth, because it's 14 minutes long and Kamasi Washington sucks. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
Yep.
A resounding yes from the co-hosts. And 2 Kendrick tracks, because we will be talking about that entire BNM album next week. That leaves us with 2 BNTs to discuss. Dan, kick it off.
Yeah, first off, we've got Girlpool, It Gets More Blue. So let's take a listen.
Arsonist tells you that it gets more blue. The things you believe in a clay bedroom snooze. I read the book. I drink the drinks. I made you and I'm still
On their 2015 debut, the 2 members of Girlpool only played guitar and bass and tried to write songs that featured no more than 2 chords. That very hard to do. For the follow-up, Power Plant, which drops May 12th, the duo has started filling out their sound, adding drums, guitar solos, and more. Pitchfork praises the band for, quote, opening up their universe. So you guys' thoughts on Girlpool?
It's great.
Another week, another girl indie group. It doesn't seem like every fucking week we talk about some female-fronted indie rock group.
It definitely does. It got me thinking, actually, that, I thought the song was fine, but I think that the problem with groups like this is that it's really difficult to, stretch an album out from this sort of sound or this sort of approach. You know what I mean? Like, listening to it in this, very bite-sized, one-song listening experience, it's easy to just be like, yeah, it's great, but imagine listening to 10 or 12 songs like this,
Yeah, because when you only listen to one, you don't notice that they're all the same song.
Yeah.
I'm going to be livid, Darin, if you like this song, but you didn't like Big Thief last week.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Are you joking about liking this song?
No, I thought it was a
What the hell?
great little song.
How is that Big Thief song not in every single way a better song than this?
It's just not, like this.
Good
this song,
argument.
This song is just like Big Thief, but better. How's that, Dan?
That
was a pretty Dan argument.
Even you will say that Big Thief was better than this.
No,
I'll just say it was the same song. Every time there's one of these bullshit indie rock songs, it's the same song. It's the same song. I've heard this song a million times.
Still good. It's still good.
Sucked the first time. Sucked the last time.
You talk about how hard it would be to fill an entire album. I felt like filling a 3.5 minute song
I was done.
Was too much.
Yeah, I agree.
I was so bored throughout that. I mean,
I was bored and I watched the video. Couldn't even keep my attention.
I mean, I get like I've never listened to their previous stuff, but it sounds like pretty derivative of like Young Marble Giants or something. But I get that there's something neat about that, like really simple, like extremely simple to the point of like just guitar and bass and, 2 chords only or something. And when you like add drums and like little pavement-y, guitar blasts, like now you're just like everybody else. Why do that?
Exactly. Completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, imagining an entire album of this sort of style or this quality, I can't imagine it being that good. I mean, I think about like, God, what's that fucking band that Pitchfork was all over in 2010?
Best Coast.
Best Coast. Yeah, Best Coast. When they were releasing a couple of singles ahead of time, I was like, whoa, I can't wait for this. And then the album came out, and like, the album was all right, but man, I can't imagine listening to it now. You know what I mean? Like it kind of had its time, and it's long over with.
Exactly. This is just another example of like these bands that you'll hear of this time, and then you'll never hear from this band again. Maybe the album will get a BNM. It'll be somewhere, up top of the, or, bottom of the year-end list, maybe. And then you'll never hear this band ever again in the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, Best Coast is like the perfect example of that. But
it really is.
I'll be outraged if this like gets a BNM. I think this is the worst out of all of the shit we've heard like this. Like the Courtneys are better. Big Thief is better. That one punkish band with the pink cover that was kind of shoegazy. You remember them?
Oh,
they were better.
That was awful.
That one particularly was awful.
Does anybody feel me on this? I guess Darin doesn't, but
no.
Dan, I mean, I feel like this is like worse than basically any of the same derivative shit.
I mean, I'll give you that, like, it doesn't speak to it because we can't even remember their name, but that shoegazy one was like a little better because it was like a little different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, like I said, it's just the same shit over and over and over again. It's I can't say one was better than the other.
Hard to.
It's the kind of song I could not like. I don't remember that Big Thief song from last week. It's just such a generic song that it's like lost in my mind. So I couldn't really even tell you if this one was better or worse. Hopefully, priests they were called. Oh yeah, that was.
Remember them?
Yeah, I do remember them.
Yeah, so this is worse than Priests.
Well,
I'll agree with that because I at least remember that song.
It's not bad. It's just unremarkable.
We've already gone like way too long on this track, but I'll have the final word, and I'll just say it's going to be fine. They have good potential. I look forward to the record. Maybe it'll get a B&M, maybe it will not. But anyway, let's move on to the next single, which was Mac DeMarco with On the Level. Let's listen.
Stand up like a man, even from the other side. On the level,
Mac DeMarco's follow-up to 2014's widely acclaimed Salad Days is among the most highly anticipated records of the year, and it drops May 5th. And this is the second consecutive single to earn a BNT from Pitchfork. What were your thoughts on the Level?
I liked it. I think I liked it better than that last song. I thought this one like added a little something new-ish to the Mac DeMarco recipe, which was in danger of getting pretty stale.
I feel like Dan summed up exactly how I feel about it when he said, I liked it. Like,
yeah, I didn't love it.
Exactly how I feel. I liked it.
I mean, I kind of feel that way, but I think it's even a little bit less. Like, I'm a little more indifferent. I just thought it was okay. I didn't really feel like I was interested in wanting to listen to it again. You know what I mean?
Right.
The first BNT that we had covered, I thought was, far more interesting and one that I would enjoy listening to an album of. But this, I don't know, it just kind of dragged a little bit. Gets real repetitive. I mean, Pitchfork even mentions it.
It could have lost a 20, 30 seconds, maybe a minute of it, and would have been a little better. Maybe it'll work better on the record. I'll give it the benefit of the doubt, but
it does sound like that. Yeah.
I just I didn't dislike it. I didn't love it. It was good. It wasn't great. Are you guys excited for this new Mac DeMarco record? Or you done
I'm
with
not
him?
really.
Me neither.
It's like, we talked about that last track, and it was kind of like I don't know, it just lost sort of the lo-fi charm of Mac DeMarco and had sort of this highly produced, just kind of bro-y chill out thing going on. And now this one, is a little different just because there's a synth on it, but I don't know, it just wasn't very interesting. He actually said it was kind of like a sister song to the song Chamber of Reflection from Salad Days. And I feel like, I don't know, I haven't listened to Salad Days in quite a while, but I just feel like that song is doing everything that this song is trying to do, but just way better, way more interesting. I feel like he's kind of lost the spark a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he's in that danger zone of, when a band, it had its lo-fi-ness, and that was a charm of it, and then they get money, and it happened to Modest Mouse.
Schmilko.
Yeah, Wilco, Modest Mouse. It happens to the best of them. I hope it doesn't happen to old goofball Mac, but he's definitely in danger. I mean, I loved Salad Days, and I liked the album before that too. But yeah, I'm just not that excited for this one because I just worry that it's going to fall to that, that trap. And I feel like we just had an oversaturation of the Mac DeMarco market, for a while. He was just everywhere, every little shit kid dresses like him now. And it just kind of annoyed me. When you see a movie and you're like, oh, that movie was good. And then everyone starts quoting it in school the next day, and then you hate it. That's kind of what Mac's become to me.
Well, is it going to get a BNM? I mean, it doesn't sound anything to me like BNM material, but it's gotten 2 BNTs now.
Yeah, but sometimes they do the old throw the BNT bone to people, and BNT a couple of tracks. I mean, that Courtney's we talked about, they got that BNT, and then that album didn't get reviewed for 3 weeks, and it was just got some shit score. So the BNT doesn't really guarantee anything.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like if this is an attempt to change up the DeMarco formula, I don't know if it's working. You know what I mean? The song just sort of bored me a little bit, and it felt a little lazy, I guess. And I don't know. I just I don't know what else Mac DeMarco could do. I'm trying to think of a way to describe how I would want it to sound, or maybe improve on it, but I can't really formulate the words there. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just that formula's kind of run its course, and there's really nowhere else to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it could be that. I kind of agree with you.
Yeah, I kind of do too. Time will tell.
We'll see.
We ready to hear about Dan's field trips?
Can't wait.
Okay, yet another field trip. I wish I would have kept track. I think this is 8 in a row, but unless something pops up, I don't have one for next week. So, maybe I will.
End of an era.
I might, with Record Store Day. So we'll see. We'll see if I feel like
sure.
leaving the house or not. But this one we'll stick to today's. I saw Acid Mother's Temple and the Melting Parisio UFO at the Social in Orlando. Acid Mother's Temple, if you're not familiar, like a Japanese like space rock like psych band. There's like 1,000 different bands within Acid Mother's Temple, but the main one is the Melting Parisio UFO, and that's the one I saw. It was pretty like rad, they just were like shredding, but like in a cool way, not like a Darin kind of way, like just real spacey. Yeah. One guy's rocking out on the theremin. They had a theremin going on. That's hard to use and not it be really corny too. And they did that well. Remember,
wait, so is this isn't two different
No,
bands?
it's one band. The band is called Acid Mother's Temple and the Melting Parisio UFO, because there's like 1,000 different bands. They're all Acid Mother's Temple and such and such. And this is the main one. But if you remember, a bunch of field trips ago, I saw one of the members of the band in like a intimate solo kind of thing. So it was cool to see him like in the context of the band. This is a band a friend of mine in like probably like 10th grade showed me this band, and I was real into it. They have like 1 billion records. They're just kind of all over the place, and I got real into them. And then obviously they don't come here very often because they're from Japan. So it was like great to finally see them. I haven't been keeping up with them as much or as big of a fan nowadays, but it was satisfied a high school early Dan desire. But I still like the band. Don't get me wrong. But it just it was good to finally get to see them. And you can check our Instagram and Twitter. I posted some pictures and stuff. And I think a video. Oh yeah, a video, because the opening band, the guy looked just like Kurt Vile. So I posted a picture of that because he looked just like Kurt Vile. I thought that was funny.
Just like Kurt Vile. It's fascinating.
You should tag.
Head over there.
Hopefully, you tag Kurt Vile.
Pause the episode right now and head over to see this guy.
I mean, just trust me. He really does. It's like I was laughing the whole time.
All right. Well, I got nothing to add because I have no idea about this band. Do you, Darin?
No, I remember you talking about that was like the drummer that you went to see or something.
It was the guitarist from Acid Mother's Temple, and then this guy who does like solo percussion stuff.
I remember.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
That's cool.
All right. Well, we ready to move on? Talk some Coachella?
yeah.
The Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival takes place over 2 weekends, and all the major acts will gear up to repeat their performances in a few days. But there are already a few interesting storylines coming out last weekend. The headliners were Radiohead, Lady Gaga, filling in for a pregnant Beyonce, and Kendrick Lamar. But also the XX, Father John Misty, Mac DeMarco, Bon Iver, Gucci Mane, Nicholas Jar, Lord, New Order, and a whole lot more performed as well. Interesting storyline. Radiohead's set was actually repeatedly interrupted by technical problems. The audio dropped out multiple times. There were a couple of bursts of violent feedback, and the band actually had to leave the stage twice. Boy, I would have been infuriated. Maybe partly because of this, most publications, including Pitchfork, claimed that Kendrick stole the show. Pitchfork's write-up basically implied that his career-spanning set, which saw fans screaming along to songs from the 3-day-old Damn, as if they were long-time classics, cemented his place at the very top of the hip-hop world. So how do you guys feel about festival culture in general and Coachella specifically? Have either of you been?
I've not been to Coachella. I've been to other festivals. I hate festivals. It's just like you got to stand outside all day. I'm like too old for it. I live in Florida, so it's hot as fuck. And like I went to that festival a couple weeks ago, and just to see one person play, I do that kind of a lot. Going all day.
Have you ever like stayed over or anything like that?
I did in like high school. The local radio station used to put on like a festival, and I used to go with my cousin, and we would like go for 2 days, and it was fun. But I was like 14 at the time.
Yeah, I have never. Well, I've done like a day festival. I went to that XX festival, which was like just a bunch of bands all day, and that was really fun. I can't imagine like sleeping there. That sounds really miserable, and like dirty Woodstock nastiness. But I don't know. I kind of like hate the whole festival culture thing. I think like Coachella's gotten out of control. I remember a couple of years ago, quite a few years ago, I guess, somebody let me borrow this like Coachella DVD. Do you remember this, Darin? It had like a performance by Bjork doing All Is Full of Love, like the remix version. And it was just like magical. And I had these like dreams of going to Coachella. There was also a really cool Arcade Fire performance on this DVD. But
I think I remember that, yeah.
I don't know, just like as years go on, it's just like huge. And just, like Guns N' Roses were a headliner last year, like Lady Gaga this year. I mean, I don't know, who needs this shit?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's like convenient. You can see like every band that's like big right now in one place, but it's just too much, especially because there's usually multiple stages. Like I know like Gucci wasn't on the main stage.
Yeah,
and
there are
stuff.
like 6 stages.
Yeah, so sometimes if you like more than one band that's playing at the same time, you either gotta like catch half of one and half the other, or you gotta sacrifice one. I don't really, that would break my heart. But
wait, how do you feel about it? Darin?
I've been to one festival. It was like a day festival many years ago. My father took me. It was called Rocktoberfest. And, the headliner, it had Lynyrd Skynyrd, but interestingly enough, they were not the headliners. It was actually David Lee Roth from Van Halen.
Oh, how stoked were you? This sounds like your dream festival.
I mean, like I said, I was very young, but it wasn't really, I wouldn't really call that the kind of festival experience that like something like Coachella seems to be, because it was more like an outdoor concert, I would say. But I've never been really interested in any of those like 3-day long festivals and stuff. I have some friends that occasionally go and everything, but it just like you guys were saying, it just sounds like a miserable experience and just not worth it. And like for people like us, I think, who care about like how things sound, I just can't imagine.
Oh yeah, doesn't sound good at all.
Yeah, that's another thing. Just outdoor concerts in general, they just never sound as great. But right. Yeah, I think it's just a young people thing, Like my little sisters go all the time.
When I went to that XX festival, I don't know, you just end up getting wasted all day. It's like, it's just what you do. And I just imagine like a multi-day festival is just like the most burned out scene by the end of it. Like, yeah, definitely. It's probably 3 straight days of just constant alcohol
drugs.
And
drug abuse. And that's why people, I think, love to go, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, some of these festivals like sell out before like any bands have even been announced. It's like people are going for the festival and then
just to get wasted.
Yeah,
with a bunch of
I
people.
mean, I guess you can assume like Coachella's going to have at least one band you like. But it's still kind of ridiculous, Like I would never like buy a ticket to a show and not know who's playing.
Yeah. Another question I had was, I wondered if Dan has had any experience with this, because I couldn't think of any specific examples of going to a show and there being like tons of technical problems. Like I've been to a show where, you couldn't hear the vocals like in the first half of the first song or something like that. And in a band, I've played shows with like a shit ton of technical problems.
I've been at a few of those shows with you.
Oh yeah. But Dan, have you ever gone to a show and like had some kind of just total meltdown, like, seen one?
I mean, not like a huge meltdown, but that does remind me of this one little story. One time I went to a show. I don't even remember who it was, but the opener, it was at Crowbar in Ybor. The opener was playing, and I was like right up on stage, like next to the monitor, and the monitor caught on fire. like the speaker
Wow.
like caught on fire, like for real. And
Great white shit.
yeah, I was scared. It might have been pre-Great White. It was like I was pretty young. It was some like punk show or something. And I remember the like security guards just like grabbed it and threw it out the door and like let the street deal with it.
Wow.
Like didn't follow up with it.
No,
at all?
no.
Like, let
It
go.
they just left it outside, and I mean that place is still there. So
One interesting point is we saw, I can't remember, we saw Boris, and the opener was
Asobi Sexu, yeah.
yeah. So she was having some sound problems and handled it like the worst way possible. Like went on like a diva fit throwing session. And
Wait, who was it that?
Asobi Sexu.
yeah, you like them, Darin.
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah.
What? So what happened?
Well, so there were just all these sound problems, and she just started like flipping out, like right,
That
like
venue
just
sucks.
throwing
yeah.
a fit. Yeah, she was like raging at the sound guy and like refusing to sing at points, and but it was like basically like a Mariah Carey situation at the New Year's Eve thing. But like if you watch the video of Radiohead during Coachella, they handle it in like a about the best way you possibly can.
Yeah.
Like, they're obviously like frustrated, but they're a little bit the fans are understanding. But if you like throw a tantrum, I mean that's a disaster.
Well,
It just makes it worse.
that reminds me, I've seen Swans a handful of times, and Michael Girard, known for his temper. The first time I ever saw them, they were like playing, and the like an amp started feeding back, and it was like the sound guy's fault, and Girard like punted a beer just into the audience and stormed off. The rest of the band like continued playing and was like not sure what to do. And then he like finally came back. Oh, he yelled like fucking fix it or something like that. He yelled something I can't remember, and that was but I mean with somebody like that it kind of made that show better.
Do you guys remember we went and saw Kanye, and after like the first song, Kanye was like screaming at the
I remember
That might have been part of the show.
yeah, that's true.
direct quote from that when he did that. He said, "Who's fucking up the show tonight for Tampa?" I'll never forget that. But that's par for the course with Kanye. When I saw him recently, he started songs over like 3-4 times. He's just a perfectionist, and that's just what he does. So I don't think he counts.
I mean, Darin, does it surprise you that like technical difficulties would happen at a place like Coachella for the headliner set, or does it just feel like this just happens all the time no matter who you are?
No, I think that is kind of shocking, and I could understand like an artist's frustrations when I think like you I don't know whether they're in control of hiring, probably not, the venue is, I guess, but like obviously there's so much effort put into the setup, people showing up hours ahead of time doing all these sound checks, the band shows up for a sound check, and then you finally go on and shit starts like fucking up out of nowhere. Like I could understand somebody being a little bit upset about that, you know what I mean? For a band,
You would be pissed off if you were in the audience.
well, I would be, because we're paying customers, but like for a local band or something who doesn't get a real sound check or doesn't have sound people setting everything up, that's a little different, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But these
Yeah.
are professionals supposedly
But
putting
I
on
mean,
this show.
it happens. What was it? Was it the Grammys where like Metallica was playing with Lady Gaga?
Yeah.
And that didn't work.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
on
that's embarrassing
live
too, though.
TV, And
Yeah.
I think it's just so like audio equipment is just like so fickle. It's like if
yeah,
one
it is.
thing is just slightly wrong, it'll take the whole ship down. So I'm a little surprised it doesn't happen more often than it does, really.
I think it becomes extra complicated when you're trying to like broadcast an event while managing at the same time the actual performance.
Right.
But anyway, I guess we shouldn't spend too much time about this. We're going to talk about Kendrick a whole lot next episode, but Pitchfork's little write-up on Coachella was like, he's the king of the world right now, and this Coachella show proved it. One thing that stuck out to me, I don't know if you guys saw this, but they kept talking about how in his set he was like standing, or he like ended up in this box. It was like sort of it had like lights around it, and he's like in the box, and then the like platform raises, and then he's like basically on top of this like cube. Nobody mentioned this, but to me it was very reminiscent of Kanye's
Watch the Throne.
Pablo tour.
Oh.
And like it's just like this black like square that he's like standing on. And Pitchfork was all like, "Oh, it's so amazing." It basically symbolized like how he's got no peers right now. He's like just on top of the world. I was like, well, one peer I can think of is Kanye, and Kanye actually did that first.
Well, I mean, Kanye is the official king of hip hop and always will be. But I mean, that sounds to me like the Watch the Throne tour. Each Jay-Z and Kanye were each on top of like giant boxes that had like video screens on them. I didn't see the Kendrick thing. So if it looks like that, he ripped off Watch the
It's
Throne.
a little bit more like minimalist looking.
Well, no matter what, he ripped off Kanye.
So Kanye's done it twice.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So even worse. I mean, I think that's just the Kanye that proves Kanye is on the top because he's the one that gets ripped off constantly.
How quick Pitchfork is to forget about Kanye.
Yeah, Kanye's been pretty quiet lately, so that might be why they're giving so much attention to Kendrick right now.
Yeah. I guess just forever they're gonna have to like trade back and forth so they don't steal each other's spotlight too much. But anything else you guys want to talk about Coachella, or are we ready to move on?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
So, as we mentioned earlier, this week, Mika Vainio passed away at the age of 53. The cause of death has not been confirmed yet, but it seems to have been some kind of accident or something. Anyway, it's terribly sad. Vainio released tons of music under many aliases and in collaboration with lots of different musicians, but he was most known as one half of the pioneering and extremely influential electronic duo Pan-Sonic, who first began making techno music in the Finnish underground techno scene. Finnish, Finland, that's kind of a confusing word, of the early 90s, but later earned international acclaim after heading off in much more experimental directions. Early on, Pan-Sonic was actually a trio for a little while called Panasonic, but the third member left after the first album, and as you can probably guess, the Japanese electronics manufacturer soon threatened legal action, forced them to change their name. It was kind of ballsy to even try that. Thus, it was 1997's Kulma, their second album, the album we're going to focus on today, that saw the true emergence of the iconic Pan-Sonic sound and aesthetic. While the rest of their IDM peers were exploring the possibilities of computers and software synthesis, Pan-Sonic was interested in the sound of hardware, particularly modified and homemade electronic machines. This made for very mechanical textures that had more in common with noise and industrial than IDM. Their minimalist pieces mostly consist of tuneless blips, glitches, electrical hums, signal interference, and everything in between. This puts them in the tradition of electroacoustic experimental music, which is basically music that explores and deconstructs the technology used to create that music in the first place. Think of Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, Pauline Oliveros, or like Steve Reich's early tape loop experiments, Alvin Lucier, that kind of stuff. At the same time, Pan-Sonic remained rooted in techno and electronic dance forms. The structure of Kulma is one that the group would return to on multiple albums, in which glitchy techno beats are deconstructed track by track until all that's left is the glitchy noise of like musique concrete, however you say that in French. What's your guys' previous familiarity with Pan-Sonic in this album?
Well, I absolutely love Pan-Sonic, so much that I'll drop you a little trivia. He named the band Panasonic in hopes that the electronic manufacturer would sponsor the band instead of sue.
I've heard that rumor.
Instead of sue them. But yeah, I
backfired.
Yeah, a little bit. I love Pan-Sonic. I love this album. They're definitely in the top of my favorite bands ever, I think.
Yeah, I have zero knowledge of this band and kind of wish I still had zero knowledge of this band. But
this guy just died, Darin. Come on.
God.
Jeez.
No respect.
None whatsoever. Yeah, I really, really love Pan-Sonic. I can't say like they're one of my favorite bands ever because I don't feel like I've even scratched the surface of their discography or all of Mika Vainio's like work under different aliases and stuff, although I've dabbled. but I'm a big fan of this album. I'm just a huge fan of like their, approach, which is like nothing else, basically. I really love the album Kesto. We tried to get Darin to talk about that today, but it's like 4.5 hours long, and he refused. Again, disrespectful. But all right, let's try to describe the sound of this album. Let's start with Darin, since he's a new listener.
I was going to suggest
and
that.
Remember,
yeah.
be kind. Be kind.
I
Darin,
was,
please.
I don't know what version of the album you guys were listening to, but I guess mine wasn't remastered. There's a whole lot of like, snowy, fuzzy sounds. I was thinking the album might sound better
That's
if they
the sound, Darin. They're not going to remaster it out.
I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay, sure.
It's just something Darin would say.
No, I know, for real.
To really like actually believe that.
Yeah.
All right, go on.
So, I think that description up there is actually like very fitting. Hums, a lot of interference, things that make you actually think, what the hell is wrong with my sound system? Especially the opening track. There's a good like 30 or 45 seconds of like, and I'm not gonna lie. I was like, is there something wrong with the setup here? Why does it sound
how stoked would Mika be if he knew that was how you reacted?
But once the first song started picking up, I was like, all right, this is kind of like sort of what I expect Dan and Gabe to be really obsessed over. As the album drags on, there's just kind of more glitchy, weird sounds, no more beats really at all. It sounds like what happened, back in the day when you would like flip to a channel on a television that you didn't actually have, and there was just like fuzziness and noises going on. That's what it sounded like. So I guess I understand the Panasonic influence there for sure.
Well, what would you add, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, that was good for a first time listener, I think. I mean, like Darin said, that first track, I love how it takes like 1.5 minutes before it like really like does anything, but it's so great. It like Panasonic does this thing where they like will start. And Kesto's the greatest example of this because they stretch it over 4 hours, but Kulma does it too, where they like start like the album, and it's like it's pretty normal. It's like, if you're like an Aphex Twin fan, definitely Autechre, something like that, like you'll feel right at home. You'll probably like that. And then it just slowly like disintegrates and becomes like just drones and like weird electronic sounds. And every now and then, especially on Kulma, like the beat, a little beat will come back or something. It'll harken back to the beginning of the record. But for the most part, it just like does this like disintegration thing, which I mean, I'm also like obsessed with those like disintegration loops from Basinski, and maybe that's why I love Panasonic as well, because they have like made albums that are purposely like that as well. It's just such a I don't want to gush over it, but it's just such like a badass idea.
Yeah, it's a genuine like musical narrative. Like for something that has like basically no melody and it's like so minimal and barely music,
but still tells a story somehow. Yeah,
it tells this like musical story. I think it's really incredible. It's I was wondering this all week because I was like, and maybe I can get Darin's take, but like I felt too like, really the first couple tracks of this album are sort of normal. Mm-hmm. Darin, would you at all use the word normal? Am I just too used to it?
No, I think that's a fair point. I mean, if you recall, we were having a conversation about music to listen to at the gym. And you had mentioned that you thought the first 3 tracks were, worthy of being listened to at the gym. And I kind of agree. It had this like real industrial kind of, music to it. You know what I mean? Like you could just sort of, I don't know, there's an energy behind it. You know what I mean? Not to say that there's not like energy throughout the rest of it, but like the rest of it just sounds like, I don't know, it just kind of, obviously you can't work out to it. You know what I mean? It's a different type of energy.
Yeah. Darin only likes things you can work out to.
Yeah, I know. Like Van Halen, David Lee Roth.
Leonard Skinner.
But no, I think like even when it sort of falls apart, so it goes from like being sort of these like experimental techno type songs, even though you can tell the sounds are like, they're not like drum machines. They're like glitches.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it'd be like the whirring sound of like a, you know, not literally, but I don't know, like a coffee machine working or something, like is the snare of that song or something like that. But you can sort of identify beats and structures and stuff. And then, yeah, the weirdest thing happens. Like if you don't, even if you pay really close attention, you almost like don't notice. It's just like at a certain moment you kind of go like, oh, it's not music anymore. Like it happens so gradually that you don't notice when it's no longer music. You know what I mean? I think that's incredible.
That's what I like absolutely love about it, is like you don't know. It's like the disintegration loops, which I think on some of the longer ones, it takes a long time before you like really notice that things have disappeared. And this works that way. And you know, I don't want to keep harking back to Kesto, but you know, that does it over 4 hours. And so it like, it's so much more like gradual that cause like the first disc and a half is like sort of normal instead of 3 songs. And, you know, I mean, it's just the coolest idea, you know, it's something that sets them apart from like their peers. Like I think Autechre is probably their closest peer in the
or like that kind of like mid-period Autechre when they got like really abstract, kind of like that.
Yeah, but them doing this like disintegration thing like sets them apart. It's not just like oh, if you like Autechre, you'll like this. You know, they are a band that's stamped their own you know, uniqueness to the genre.
Yeah, I also wanted to add before I forget, like if you're at all aware of like what circuit bending is and what it sounds like, you know, that's kind of like the vibe we're getting here. I sort of wonder if like not a lot of people were doing it. I assume that's kind of what they mean when they're saying like homemade or home modified instruments and stuff like that. But it has that kind of like glitchy popping of that sound.
Well, I do know about one of the homemade instruments they had. They had a box. It was like a big black box, and it was just 12 oscillators in this like box. They called it it was like the tackle box or like the fishing box or something like that. So, you know, there's an unofficial third member of the band who makes their instruments. I'd say his name, but it's like, you know, some Finnish thing that I can't pronounce.
Yeah, so Darin, I mean, tell me more about your experience with this. It sounds like you didn't like it, but I mean, is there anything you can appreciate about it as like experimental music?
So here's what I was thinking, because, you know, I think a lot of people have like a misconception when they hear stuff like this, especially when it gets really abstract, that it's like, well, anybody could just like sit around and fuck with some stuff, and then, you know, you just hear this weird noise and whatever, and then you think that's cool. But these guys seem to, there's definitely, it's pretty easy to pick up on a sense that they have like control over it. You know what I mean? Like they are really exploring the different sounds of this hardware, you know what I mean? And making music with it rather than just making like noise and just trying to capture that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm like really glad you said that, because like we've mentioned before, like me and Gabe play experimental music together. I do stuff on my own. So I've been to too many noise shows, and you can always tell somebody who like practices and like has control over their equipment, and then you could tell another guy who just like, you know, bought a couple distortion pedals and just gonna see what happened, you know, on the fly. And so I'm really glad that somebody that's you know, on the outside of that kind of stuff gets it as well.
Oh yeah.
Well, because I think that's always, it's like a challenge, you know. And I remember asking you guys early on when I was listening to your band, like, you know, what you're doing, like, can you repeat it? Like, could you do it again? You know what I mean? And improve on it or change it a little bit here and there, or, you know, make it like a movement, like classical music almost. And the good, you know, music that can do that, I think are the ones that, like this, for instance, I feel like does a really good job of like breaking things down and actually controlling it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that like Pansonic was really into like recording direct. So basically like live, you know, recordings, although, you know, they're just like in the studio or whatever, but they would sort of record it live. And I'm sure they sort of selected like things that they thought worked better than others. And I really appreciate when people are into like sort of capturing the moment a little bit, and that there is sort of like an improvisatory feature to it. But at the same time, they do have like tremendous control over what they're doing, and they're like deliberately exploring and letting things flow and change, and like deliberately looking for those little surprises that happen sometimes when you're not like too strict with it. And you're letting some things happen. I think like that's perfectly captured here. And also we talked about the ambient compilation last time, and how like sort of what separates like good experimental music from bad experimental music a lot of the time is just like the effort that's put into it, like Dan just said, and then that presentation about it. I mean, Pansonic has like this incredible aesthetic that is like developed and, like just really thought out, like the way they're presenting their music. Obviously that like narrative structure to their music is really well thought out and planned. They're just like the total package. They're like they set the bar of like what experimental music could be, like nowadays. I mean, you look at like the people that they kind of have a lot in common with, which like, Stockhausen and Reich and, Pauline Oliveros and stuff. I mean, these are guys that were basically like on the level of those juggernauts of experimental music, but in like the 90s and early 2000s, which I don't know, blows me away.
Yeah, they completely belong in that just like pantheon of experimental gods.
All right, so Darin, if you had to give this a score, what would you give it?
I think it's a record that requires further listens, though I don't think I'm gonna find the time or the opportunity, unfortunately. We do have Kendrick Lamar. You
want to spell Kesto? So you could write it down and look it up later. It's Kesto.
Yeah. You said 4.5 hours? That's great. That would be...
Yeah, 4.5.
It's 234 minutes.
That's like 4 gym sessions right there. So I'll just put it on pause and then fire it back up when I come back.
Straight up, the first disc would be great in the gym.
Yeah, it really would, honestly.
To be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Your
the
score.
I would probably just give it, like a 7 for now.
Ooh. This guy just died, Darin.
Rest in peace.
I realize that, and thank you for his all the contributions. Obviously,
I feel like you'll like Kesto better. You'll give it a higher one.
Give it a shot. Update us next week.
Okay.
What about you, Dan?
I think I would obviously give this a straight 10. I mean, it's an absolute classic. Like I said, I mean, I love the band. I love this album. They're just fantastic. And it's funny you mentioned listening to Kesto in the gym. The first time I ever listened to that record, I had started when I went to work, and so I listened to it all day, and then I had to bike home, and I had to bike home during the last track, which is over an hour long, and sometimes it just sounds like there's nothing playing anymore. So that was probably the greatest bike ride of my life. What about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I think I would give it a 10 as well. I mean, I love Kesto, but this I sort of like more. It's like more feasible to actually work through. And we didn't mention, but actually the last track. So it sounds like these machines, these whirring machines, and like they just sort of like turn into just buzzes and hums and stuff. And then like the last like 2 tracks, or maybe a little bit into the second to last track, and then on it's like this machine comes back to life, and we go back to like sort of the like pulses and blips and like glitchy percussive sounds and stuff. And I don't know. I think it's just like such an amazing piece of work. I mean, to me, it's very inspiring what you could do experimentally nowadays.
Well, before we move on to our proper reviews, we would just like to remind you to hit the subscribe button and help us out a lot by leaving us a nice review in the iTunes store or telling a friend about the podcast. Of course, thanks to all the people who have already done that, and remember to email, tweet, or Facebook message us. Follow along with Pitchfork's reviews and email us your thoughts on the albums we'll be discussing, or ask us about anything at all. You can email us at metaphoricmusic@gmail.com or find us on any social media outlet at metaphoricmusic. Now, let's hear a little bit of that Sunday review.
I need to belong. I need to hang on. I need.
We only had one proper review this week, and it is that Sunday classic. So this week it was Black Flag with Damaged, which on Sunday got a 9.2 in a review by Matthew Schnipper. And a little background on that, originally released in 1981, and maybe it was the start of the Reagan era, or maybe it was because the first wave of punk rock had fizzled out so quickly. Longtime listeners will remember that the Ramones went full sellout with the 1980s End of Century, for example, which we reviewed a long time ago. That was one of the early Sunday classics. But the punk genre underwent a significant change at the start of the new decade. Hardcore punk, as it became known, was angrier, faster, heavier, noisier than pretty much anything else at that point. And unlike the Ramones, its fans deliberately rejected everything mainstream. They esteemed authenticity above all else. Posers, commercialism, and the music industry were common targets of their rage. That might sound like a little bit too edgy nowadays, but we can basically thank hardcore for the entire idea of DIY music, devoted underground scenes, and independent record labels. One band that helped give shape to the emerging subculture was Black Flag, whose debut album, Damaged, is frequently called the genre's best. Just prior to recording the record, Black Flag enlisted a 20-year-old singer named Henry Rollins. Most critics claim that his unforgettable ferocity made a good band into a great one. Weirdly, Pitchfork's 9.2 review is kind of critical of this universally acclaimed classic. The reviewer argues that the music hasn't lost any of its edge, but the lyrics just kind of rage at nothing in particular and sound a bit whiny compared to later hardcore bands who would channel Black Flag's rage into actual social change. He goes as far to cite our favorite Gloss as a good example of this. I'm sure we'll all agree with that. He even calls fan favorite TV Party, quote, crappy, banal, and dumb, end quote, for taking pathetic potshots at, quote, normies, and concludes that the record is an important historical document, but no longer a great album. So do you guys have any previous familiarity with hardcore, Black Flag, Henry Rollins, this album, any of that junk?
I would probably classify myself as like a person who thinks hardcore is shit. I kind of like the Germs, which feels like that first punk wave, like turning into hardcore.
Yeah, it's kind of that bridge.
Yeah, but I don't know. I've always meant to, like, I don't know. I feel like I've tried. I've always kind of meant to like give Minor Threat like a really good try, or give Black Flag a really good try. And I thought maybe having to spend a whole week with Black Flag this week would change my mind, and stay tuned to find out if it did.
That was a good tease. Wow. What about you, Darin?
Oh, yeah.
As far as like the hardcore genre, I'm generally thinking of things from the mid 2000s decade years, and those were just awful.
Kind of became post-hardcore, yeah.
I guess, yeah, but those were just awful, and they're still awful. Henry Rollins, on the other hand, though, I remember seeing him a lot on the VH1 series, I Love the 80s.
Yeah.
Which I just think is
the weirdest thing. That's the weirdest thing.
Why did he do that? He's like a little celebrity, kind of. Why the fuck do I know
Yeah,
that?
he's like very
funny.
famous. He's weirdly famous, yeah.
I have no idea why.
So he didn't stay in Black Flag for very long, right?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't like a band for a super long time, but he's on most of their LPs. And I know you know him because for a good chunk of our adolescence, Tool was our favorite band, and he guessed on that one song on like Undertow. But
he's just like a
yeah, it's just
word,
like talking.
right?
Yeah, he says like that thing. I in like late middle, early high school was like obsessed with hardcore music. I loved Black Flag. I loved the Dead Kennedys. I still do. I loved Minor Threat. They're still okay. Just all that stuff. I even got into the Henry Rollins band for a little bit. Don't bother with that. But yeah, I was super into all this, and I hadn't listened to this album in it's probably been 10 years at least, if not more.
Back.
So yeah, this was 14, 15-year-old Dan would have been loved it. But go ahead and describe the sound of this record, and kind of hardcore in general, I guess.
Yeah, so it's pretty. I mean, it's going to sound like exactly what you're picturing when you hear the words hardcore punk. But it's pretty raw. I mean, even today, like you listen to like the Sex Pistols and you're like, oh, this was like radical, once upon a time. I can't believe that. But it sounds pretty fucking raw. I mean, the guitars are like, I think Pitchfork's review even compares them to like a drill or something. And it does kind of sound like that. Like they're so like just sharp and like high end. It's like the craziest sound. And, Henry Rollins is, I don't know. When I first started listening to this like a couple of days ago, I was like, I don't get what's so special about him, but he does kind of command this like, it's just like this crazy wind tunnel of like noise. I mean, they're playing like as fast as like they possibly can. And it's kind of cool the way he sort of like occupies the center of that and sort of like owns that sound a little bit. What would you guys add to that?
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, the sound is very punishing. I would say, the guitars, generally incredibly harsh. It's all up in the treble. I mean, you can barely hear, bass or anything like that. But Henry Rollins does do a remarkable job of actually somehow sticking out amongst all the noise. And I think that's what drew me to the album and kind of kept me interested, just to kind of see what he would do. It felt like I was listening to a live album though, and I think that's a testament to like their ability to like capture some of that energy in a studio. I'm sure it's even like crazier and more wild in a live setting, but and that's always a challenge to try to bring that into the studio. But I think like I would say that they did a pretty decent job of that. Like I felt like it was very energized throughout, and by the end of it, Henry Rollins sounds like he's just exhausted himself over like a 40 or 50 minute show. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a good description is for hardcore in general. Like the good ones always sound live in the studio. And in fact, you would think then a live album from one of these hardcore bands would be fantastic. But I've heard the Black Flag live one and stuff. They're just always like recorded so poorly and everything. Like they are awful. So this. You really do get that live feel with still being able to hear it. But I think you guys both described it great. So much treble. I think that drill analogy is very astute. And yeah, Henry Rollins, he just like demands attention. I think a lot of these kind of bands, like the less good ones, the singer kind of gets like buried, pushed to the back or something. Like you can't understand what they're saying, and that's a big problem I've had with Gloss. They're writing about stuff, but you don't know what they're saying. You can understand a lot of Henry, and whatnot.
He yells like what he's trying to say is important. Now, Pitchfork's review argues that it's not, but he yells that like it's important and like he wants you to understand what he's saying, and I think that is what sort of captured my attention a little bit. Would you guys describe this as DIY sounding, or does it just sound like a record sounds in 1981?
I would say it sounds pretty DIY sounding. I think that Pitchfork is somewhat right when it says the reviewer said that a lot of hardcore albums are sort of like a snapshot of the time that they were living in. And I feel like that was definitely happening there, even though he's not necessarily being like super specific about a lot of stuff. And I actually do want to say something about kind of some of the themes that are talked about, but go ahead, Dan. Did you want to answer that question too?
I think it does kind of sound a little DIY, what year did this album come out? 81. I mean, if you listen to like a more mainstream album from 1981, I think you can hear the difference in production.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of cool. I think in a weird way, it sort of carries on that punk tradition, long after the Ramones started working with Phil Spector and shit like that, of anybody could do this. Like you could get a band together and start doing this. Yeah. I think the DIY aesthetic gives you that same kind of like excitement. I also read an interesting thing I wanted to mention before I forget, which is that I read something like basically punk kind of split in the 80s, and that like all the art school kids started making post-punk, and then all the non-art school kids started making hardcore. Does that sound right to you, Dan?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, honestly, that's a good description.
It's not super smart music. It's not super smart. I wouldn't call it super smart.
I'd agree.
All right, wait, but what? Talk about the lyrical themes and stuff.
So I just, if you were to ask me to just describe this album, I would probably say that, it's just a couple of guys that, love to get together, maybe have a few brewskis even. And, they write songs about, like that first song called Rise Up. It's a positive message about, people are like laughing behind your back. You just gotta rise above all that,
Right,
So the reason why I'm like saying it in such a joking fashion is because a lot of this feels a lot less aggressive. Like the music is very aggressive, but the lyrics are not nearly as aggressive as I guess I was expecting.
Well,
go ahead.
I can explain that. That's because this is the first album with Henry Rollins, and a lot of the music. Greg Ginn, the guitarist, wrote most of the songs, and a lot of this was written like before he joined the band, Henry. And so they used to have like a kind of joke songs, and then and some of them are on this record. But then they realized that like Henry was just this like such a like commanding, like kind of scary guy that they couldn't be funny anymore, and so they like stopped with the funniness after like My War is doesn't have any of that like silly kind of songs on it, and none of the records past that.
That's interesting, actually.
Yeah. But that's
I
because
didn't know that.
Henry wasn't in the band yet at that point. He was actually just a fan who they like let him on stage to sing a song that he was requesting, and then they liked it and had him do some rehearsals and be the roadie for a while and do the encores, and then eventually push the old singer out and take over.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you mentioned that, actually, because like we get some of these kind of jokey songs, and I think what Darin's talking about is like them being ironic, basically.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But like toward the end, or just occasionally, we get these like, I don't know, when Henry Rollins is just like being scary or something, like you stop the goofing around. And I thought those were kind of awesome. I don't know if their other albums are supposed to be good or what, but I would be more interested in stuff like, I don't know, like Depression, Room 13, Life of Pain, the last song, Damaged One. I mean, Life of Pain is crazy. Like, he's like screaming at this person for like cutting themselves, but in like the scariest way. I don't know. It's like,
yeah, if you like those like scary Rollins tracks, you'll like the later albums a little better. Like My War is a lot more of that. Slip It In, Loose Nut, stuff like that. Six Pack is actually like making fun of the former lead singer. Actually, another little trivia fact for you there.
I mean, really,
it's amazing. I remember all this shit.
Yeah. It seems like the early half of, like the first half of the album is kind of those jokey sort of songs. I don't know. Like once you get down to like mostly Depression and onward, it's just punishing, brutal.
Yeah, I think that's a. We always talk about albums being cohesive and like the sequencing being good. I think that's because you got to think too, this was a record. So side one is kind of got that, and then side two, so you had that split in it. And so I think that's definitely on purpose.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we could talk about sequencing. Like, does that actually work? Because I'm sure it was deliberate, but, it worked a little better when we had two sides of vinyl, and now it's kind of like awkward in the digital realm where it's just one long piece switching between sides like that. But I think more importantly, we could talk about, do you guys think that kind of goofier first half works? I mean, Pitchfork is really critical of how juvenile and stupid they sound on those tracks.
I mean, yeah, sure, they're like a little juvenile, but this is music for juveniles, I mean, I don't know how Henry Rollins was like 20 something, when right. This came out. And like I said, I loved this music when I was 14 through like 16 or 17. It wasn't juvenile then, I agreed with it more and stuff. So I think if you're looking at it as a 30-plus-year-old, you're going to find it to be a little, hokey or
well, Darin, as somebody who loves TV, were you personally offended by them making fun of somebody who watches TV?
Why do I love TV? What are you talking about?
You like your Bachelor and your American Idol and
That is
all
true.
that.
I would have been, if we were to ever cover this song, I would probably shout those ones out, Monday Night
right.
Football.
Yeah, instead of like the Jeffersons in Dallas.
I think, Dan makes a good point. I think that, this definitely serves a purpose at a certain point in your life, you know what I mean? And I would, certainly liken this to my love for a band like Tool, when I was younger. It definitely had a purpose in my life, and I definitely agreed with a lot of the themes, and it just, I don't know, it just fit right in. And I can imagine, had I not been listening to Tool, maybe I would have listened to something like this and totally had found something that I could totally relate to. But it just doesn't age well. I mean, I still have an appreciation for Tool, but it's not like I definitely don't listen to it the same way.
It becomes like all nostalgia based.
Yeah.
Like when I listen to Tool or this, I think of the times when I liked this music more, and that's the pleasure I garner for it. But I mean, it served a purpose. I thought people who watched a lot of TV were stupid when I was that old, and I spent a good portion of today watching Jersey Shore reruns.
Oh, yeah.
People change. People change.
You are now exactly what they're talking about. I know. That's crazy.
Hey, well, Henry Rollins is on fucking VH1 I Love the 80s, so he can go fuck himself.
Exactly. Everyone changes.
Okay, well, I kind of expected Dan to be like outraged by Pitchfork's criticisms of this album, but how do we feel about those? I mean, do you agree this is more like historically interesting than a great album?
I mean, it's hard to score it because, like, if I look at it like objectively, its importance in the hardcore genre. I mean, for DIY music in general.
Right.
I mean, which is even extended to so many other genres. I mean, the music we make is DIY music and stuff. So I mean, because of all that, you can't deny it like being a 10. But if I go just like this album in a vacuum, the enjoyability of it today. It's not a 10, I didn't want to keep listening to this all week, anymore. I'm not sure. It's still hard to give it a score because, I have like this previous fondness for it, where I would have been mad if you didn't give it a 10. But I
genuinely angry with
no, you. Yeah, I would have been like generally. I probably would have stopped talking to.
Not sitting with us at the lunch table anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have.
This Lateralis, Mars Volta.
Tool was a little, but it's just I think I would give it. It's just hard because I say like an 8, but I think maybe even me saying an 8, I'm letting the nostalgia, give me rose-colored glasses or whatever.
So you'd go lower?
I don't know. It's just hard to say. Like, if we're talking influence, 10 hands down. If we're talking as a 29-year-old, my enjoyment of this album, I mean, it's just not that enjoyable to listen to anymore. Probably like a 7.5 if I let it just if I just went no nostalgia. I think that's probably somewhere around where I'd put it.
God, I would love to just talk to like 15-year-old Dan and just
I know I'd be so pissed
what he becomes in the future.
I would hate myself.
Broken hearted. You watched what all day?
So I'm going to give this a 9, and let me explain why I'm going to give it a 9. First off,
bitchin' guitar solos.
Yeah. I mean, I really do think that this has a lot of like great energy. I think it's actually kind of fun to listen to, maybe once or twice, dozens of times over the course of a week, maybe not, but once or twice it's fun to listen to. I give it a 9 because of its historical importance. If I had just heard it for the first time, and all this history behind it didn't exist, it would probably be somewhere in the 8 range. So I understand where you're coming from, Dan, saying it's a 10, but to me it's not a 10 because it's not a great album to listen to like today. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's fun a couple of times, but it's not like a, I don't know.
The record itself doesn't hold up for you. I understand that. Right. And I mean,
take your pick from any other of the 10s that we've granted to any, pre-1980 album. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't have that quality that has like aged well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I understand that.
I guess I feel similarly. What blew my mind was I found a lot of things to enjoy about this album. I mean, I kind of agree with Pitchfork's review when they say that, these more like messy, crazy tracks are the best ones. And the more traditional ones that sound kind of like, that chanty kind of traditional punk shit were just like more typical and boring and haven't aged that well. So I found a lot of things to enjoy, but at the same time, this record is only 36 minutes long and it feels way longer.
I agree.
I mean, it's like, I don't know, by the last track, you're just so ready for it to be over, even though the last track is really kind of the best one. I really, really like that track a lot. It slows things down and it's like, sounds even heavier. You know what I mean?
That's the only track that Rollins has a writing credit on.
Right. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, there were a bunch of tracks like that I found similar things to enjoy, where it was just rougher around the edges and crazier. But there was a huge portion of this that I thought was just kind of boring as hell and unpleasant to listen to. And overall, if I'm thinking about a score, it's like if I want to combine historical importance with my enjoyment, it might average out at around an 8. But if it's just sort of like my enjoyment, would I ever listen to this again? Probably not. I might give it like a 6.5 or something like that.
Ooh.
We ready to play a quick game?
Yeah.
Into the flame, into the fire, with no regard for a thing. Fuck that, I'm the lord of the game. I rule this empire.
All right, it's time to play a brand new game. Excited to host, even though I would love an opportunity to win. I feel like I'm
Been a while.
So far behind. You get
Been a long time.
I was trying to think of a way to include myself in this, but it's just not possible. So, anyway, the new game is called Hey Wait, Don't Tell Me. If you're a podcast,
sounds a little familiar.
If you're a savvy podcast
About to
listener,
get hit with a lawsuit.
you may be familiar.
Panasonic style.
Maybe they'll sponsor us.
Yeah.
Public radio. Anyway, so the basis of this game is very similar to one that is out there already. But basically, what I've done is I put together a series of questions based on some of the news that Pitchfork has put out over the past week. So hopefully, you've been keeping up with Pitchfork articles. If not, you are going to fail at this game. So what I will do is I will kind of read either a question or sort of a statement that'll end with who am I talking about, or what is is there a particular artist that I'm discussing here. So all of the questions, or all of the answers, I guess I should say, is like an artist, with the exception of one. Okay. It's first come, first serve. There's no multiple choice. So if you know the answer, shout it, but you have to wait until I finish reading the entire statement. Okay.
All right.
So here we go. Number 1. Many of us remember watching the great Bill Nye's science show in elementary school, and he's now back with a brand new show on Netflix. The theme song was created by this artist.
Tyler the Creator.
That sounded like Dan to me.
Are you shitting me?
Point on that one.
Are you shitting me? I said it like instantly.
I said it more instantly.
Oh, fuck that. Fuck that.
Okay, number 2. This artist celebrated their 24th birthday this week.
Oh, man. I know this.
There's actually a couple of articles about it.
I know. I remember reading about it.
Shit.
I can't think of any.
Give you guys 5 seconds.
Oh.
Was that 97? Who came out in 97?
Oh, man. I know it.
The correct answer was Chance the Rapper.
Ah. I remember that. I read that.
I thought you meant like the anniversary of a band starting.
Oh, you dumbass. Who says that about a band?
I don't know.
It's Black Flag's 30th birthday today.
All right, yeah. You may be right there.
So Dan 1, Gabe 0.
Fuck.
Number 3. Coachella happened this past weekend, but this artist played a surprise show just outside of LA and debuted a few new songs.
Was it Drake?
Nope.
Lana Del Rey.
It's a good guess, but you're both wrong. It was Lorde.
I know it. Lady Gaga.
Nope. Lorde played a small show, a surprise show, and debuted a couple of songs. I figured you guys would pick up on that since Pitchfork's been talking about Lorde a lot.
They have.
She did cover Runaway. I know that.
Yeah, for like 5 seconds.
I didn't listen to it.
All right, here comes a more challenging question. This week, Demi Lovato settled a copyright lawsuit brought on by this band who claimed she sampled one of their songs without their permission. I'll give you 2 points if you can guess the band and the song.
I'm a little rusty on my Demi Lovato knowledge.
Who would she? Wilco.
Who
I don't
would
know.
she?
Someone shitty.
It's a band that you are both familiar with.
Oh, good. That narrows it down. I only know a couple bands. So.
Yeah, that really narrows it down.
All right. Might as well just guess a band that Demi Lovato might like to rip off. I'll say Van Halen.
Oh my. Dan, you got a guess?
Pansonic.
It's probably still wrong, like yours. Yeah, I don't know. AC/DC.
I don't know why the dad rock guesses here, but
Because it got your radar, so.
yeah, you're both wrong. The answer was Sleigh Bells.
Oh.
No idea. I forgot about them, though. Forgot they existed.
Yeah, I didn't even know that there was a lawsuit, but I thought it was interesting they had settled it. She had apparently used one of their songs, I guess, but whatever. All right, number 5. Score is still 1-0. Come on, guys. I was hoping this game would be a big hit.
It's not going to.
It should be 1-1, to be honest.
Well, it's not, though. So.
Skype's delay is the only reason I lost a point.
You're going to get this one, though. All right, here we go. Number 5. This singer canceled a couple of shows last week, citing health concerns.
Morrissey.
Gabe's got it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Tied up. I only have 2 more, so hopefully, one of you pulls ahead for the win. All right. Number 6. Car Seat Headrest covered a song by the Smiths and shared it with the internet last week. What's the name of the song that they covered?
Oh, I remember this.
Shoplifter, or I don't even know. I don't remember what they did.
I remember reading this. I'm trying to think. Was it That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore?
Yes, it was. Wow.
Damn it.
Yes.
Wow. I was kind of hoping we would tie so that we both would get a point and we're just pull a little further
Yeah, we
ahead
got
of
one
Darin.
more question, though. We got one more.
Yep, we got one more, so Dan's got a chance.
Well,
And
let me get it so we can be both.
if you
one
get
more
it, then
Darin.
I'll have to,
We'll
I'll
team
have
up
to
on
quickly.
this.
I'll have to quickly jump over to Pitchfork and find a random article. All right. A member of an illustrious rap duo has announced a new album called Boomiverse.
God.
Trying to think of illustrious
Boomiverse.
rap duos. Couldn't be Outkast. I feel like I would have heard about that.
No, that would have, that'd be on the radar. Other. Are you being sarcastic?
No, I'm not.
What?
Wait, say the name of the album again.
Boomiverse.
It sounds corny.
I'll just guess Run DMC because the third member died. Or duo now.
I said a member of, not the duo itself.
Oh, a member of Big Boy.
Dan
Oh, it's
has
gonna be
got
that.
it. No, Dan's got
Are
it.
you kidding me?
Yeah, I'm not shitting you.
Big Boy's coming out with an album? I fucking
He
love
is.
Big Boy. How did I not
He is.
hear about that?
Yeah, he said it's he said today. I saw that. But yeah, you worded that question poorly, or
I said
would've
a
guessed
member
that.
of. What do you mean?
Yeah, I guess maybe we picked up poorly.
I can't believe that.
All right.
I'm hyped.
Well, we're tied up.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna find a tiebreaker right now.
Turn your phone off, Dan.
Hop on Pitchfork real quick.
All right, here we go. Lana Del Rey has been chatting with Courtney Love this week about her new album, and she has detailed a couple of collaborations. Can you name one of the 2 that are mentioned in the Pitchfork article?
Fuck! I read this on Facebook
I did too, yeah.
accidentally.
Yeah.
I know The Weeknd's one. He's on that dumb album.
Come on, Gabe, if you can name the other one.
I know I read this.
He's Googling.
He's scrolling down Pitchfork right now.
I'm Googling my brain right now. Father Don Misty?
It was Sean Lennon, buddy.
Oh,
yeah.
Dan
Remember that now.
takes it again.
Oh, fuck.
Always.
Wow. The crowd was
God.
really behind you, Gabe. You were the underdog.
Well, I got
guys.
the first fucking point.
You were the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah, you were right in there the whole time.
No,
Just-
except that I earned more points. I was more like Hillary Clinton.
Well, just
Throw an asterisk up on Dan's thing.
Just
throw a couple asterisks.
for the record, I have 6. Gabe has 3. That's half of my score, by the way. And then Darin has 2. So
I
looks
haven't
like
played. You guys have played more games, obviously. So
I don't know about that.
Actually, every game that Darin has hosted, he's had a chance to win.
Yeah, he always picks categories so that
Yeah,
he can win.
he does.
Yeah, it's not working
He
out
should
for
be
him.
like blowing us the fuck out right now.
we got a long year ahead of us, guys.
Yeah,
Come on,
well,
I still
yeah.
got plenty of chances.
We gotta knock him even further behind. Next week, gonna be a big episode. Probably the biggest album of the year, unless something big else drops. But Kendrick's "Damn" got a BNM. There's also a Thelonious Monk BNR, and we'll have the Sunday Classic, whatever that remains to be seen, and maybe some more. So make sure you subscribe. You can do that on iTunes, pretty much any podcast app, or if you want, you can listen in the browser, which is metaphoricmusic.com. You can email us your thoughts, concerns, questions, anything you want. metaphoricmusic@gmail.com. Stay connected on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all of that. You can message us on there too at Metaphoric Music. So we'll see you next week.
See ya.
So long.